Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 11 of Avengers Assemble called Hulked Out Heroes. And I gotta admit, going into this episode, I was pretty skeptical. This seemed one of those stories that was just going to be too silly for its own good, but it actually ends up being a pretty solid episode. It's, at the end of the day, really kind of a chance to really showcase the Hulk and Widow as characters. Now, you heard me complain about them attempting to characterize Hulk back in the depth charged episode. Here they're doing the characterizing the Hulk right. So let's get into it. First of all, one thing that I liked was we see at the very beginning we see Hawkeye and the Hulk playing a game, and it hints at that it's some kind of a Captain America game, which is funny because in the episode before last of Ultimate Spider-Man, they even talked about there being a Captain America video game called Shield of Honor, on which Captain America himself, sorry, did indeed consult. So, seeing as how both Ultimate Spider-Man and Avengers Assemble are done by Man of Action and are heavily implied to take place in the same universe, I think that's probably a little nod there. Very nice touch. Now, one of the main cruxes of this episode is Nick Fury wanting a way to take down the Hulk in case of him just getting completely out of control. Now, this is something that we've seen quite a few times in superheroes. The heroes are thinking, right, they're usually like the heroes or somebody that's equivalent to S.H.I.E.L.D., who the heroes trust, says, well, the heroes discover the hard way that they have a contingency plans in place to take them down if they ever should go bad. There was over in the X-Men comics, they found out that Professor Xavier had come up with all these ways to, if they completely went bad, for the X-Men to go out and take down their fellow team members. There was a famous story in Justice League, I believe it was the Tower of Babel story, where the team discovered that Batman had files listing all these ways to completely take down every supervillain and superhero, including his fellow members of the Justice League, in case they went bad. And the Justice League reacted extraordinarily poorly to that and kicked Batman out of the Justice League. It was actually quite a good story if you ever want to check that out. Now, one thing that I liked that a lot of people might have missed is that at the early part of the episode, when you see Fury and Widow escaping from the AIM agents, in the background you see a building that is quite obviously the Hagia Sophia. Now, I might not be 100% pronouncing that right, but basically it is like the Empire State Building or the Chrysler Building of Istanbul. I mean, seriously, that, like, if you think of anything in Istanbul, it's gonna be the Hagia Sophia. And if that looks a little bit familiar, you might recognize it as it was, I think, to some degree, or some palace in Istanbul was actually used as the Naboo Palace in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace of the Star Wars movies. Not that any of us particularly probably want to think about the Phantom Menace unless we absolutely have to. Man, that was such a terrible movie, really. But on the bright side, we know that at least whatever he does with the franchise, J.J. Abrams probably will not make a movie that bad, and he will probably not put Gungans or Ewoks in it. Probably. Yeah. Well, let's just say that I wasn't exactly a huge fan of Star Trek Into Darkness, and leave it at that. Anyway, let's continue on. The bad guys that we see this episode, the Blood Brothers. I'm afraid I know nothing about these guys. I have never heard of these guys before. I've never seen them before. I got nothing for you on that one. Although I was certainly amused to hear an alien using Japanese for no reason. But hey, if aliens can for no discernible reason speak English, then certainly they can throw in gratuitous Japanese to try and seem like characters from an 80s action movie. Yeah, the 80s were a weird time if you weren't there. Anyway, one thing I also liked was how the heroes' costumes kind of transformed along with them. Of course, in the comics, the Hulk's clothes were always getting destroyed, except for his pants, which, of course, by necessity had to remain. Kind of wonder if those. I was actually wondering through most of the episode if they weren't going to turn out to have been made of unstable molecules. And it looks like that might have been the case in the stuff that Hawkeye and Tony were wearing, because their clothes pretty much fit them right after they changed back, but not in the case of Captain America, Falcon, and who knows with Thor. I don't think so, but Thor, magic, whatever. Another thing, speaking of clothes, is the containment suit that Widow wears. It makes her look rather like a character called Hazmat from the Avengers Academy comic books. And despite the somewhat cheesy name, Avengers Academy it's actually a pretty good series. It's got some very interesting, very cool characters in it. Hazmat's a great character. I believe she's over in I forget exactly what the current miniseries that she's in right now. There's some other characters in there that I really liked, such as Finesse and Vale, and just really interesting characters that were very much a continuation of the Avengers: The Initiative series from several years back. But anyway, as I said, this episode is ultimately kind of a big character moment for Hulk and Widow. And it certainly is interesting to see these sort of two team up, because they're just so radically different. Hulk is all about force, and Widow is all about finesse. Now, not that Widow can't use force when required to. She is unquestionably like one of the most dangerous people in the Marvel Universe in her own way. But, as I said, compared to the Hulk, yeah, Widow's very much a finesse character. But here, the Hulk really kind of calls Widow out on her divided loyalties and says, you need to choose. Who are you really loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. or to the Avengers? And the Widow does make some really good points about just how dangerous the Hulk is. And of course, the Hulk also kind of, as he even says, he gets to see what he is like from the outside, and he doesn't like what he sees. He sees all of his most negative traits taken and exaggerated, but not so much that he doesn't recognize, hey, I do that. So, this is, have you ever like heard your voice on a recording and go, I don't really sound like that, do I? It's kind of like that. But the Hulk is pretty quick to accept that this is the truth. This is how he really is, because the Hulk can't kid himself about who and what he is. It's like he says to Falcon, treat everything like an egg. That's the world. That's what the Hulk has to do. He has to treat everything around him like an egg. Over on the Justice League, there was this really, really great story that ultimately culminated in Superman fighting Darkseid. And he gives Darkseid this absolutely epic, like great, one of the best Superman speeches ever, where he talks about, I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, having to take constant care not to break something, to break someone, or someone could die. And it ultimately is up to him saying, talking about how he always has to hold back in fights, and he just says to Darkseid, but you can take it, can't you, big man? What we have here is a unique opportunity for me to cut loose and show you just how powerful I really am. And Superman pounds Darkseid into the ground. It is spectacular. And here we get to see some of that. We get to see the equivalent of that for the Hulk. We get to see, it even calls it the Hulk Unleashed. And we get to see Hulk is the strongest one there is. I mean, that's kind of one of the Hulk's great taglines in the comics. Now, our Hulk here on the show says it slightly more eloquently, but it's there. And I certainly love that he referred to turning the Avengers being turned back to normal as becoming puny, because that's, again, another very much signature choice of words for the Hulk. Banner is puny. Hulk is strongest one there is. I mean, that's in the comics. That is classic Hulk. Of course, the more modern, that's also a somewhat older Hulk. In the more recent years, the comics have kind of favored a take on the Hulk that we sort of see here, where he's he's reasonably intelligent. He can even be outright crafty, compared to the more childlike, just sort of rage monster that predominated the comics for so long in the 70s and the 80s. And I really did like that scene at the end where Hulk and Widow sort of reaffirm that, yeah, we trust each other. And again, this is also a chance to showcase that despite how he acts, that the Hulk is in fact also inside of his brain, not just a gamma scientist, but an extremely brilliant man. Bruce Banner is a smart, smart dude. So, honestly, that's kind of one of the big things that's really sort of disappointed me throughout these shows is that we've not really seen Banner. And to me, that's always a mistake. The Hulk is great, but what makes the Hulk interesting is that you have this struggle, this person trying to find balance. Now, granted, you could kind of make the case that perhaps in this universe, it's I think they did it in the comics where the Hulk was extremely intelligent, but if he turned into Banner, Banner was just sort of crazy and mindless, except he was just like some skinny white dude who really wasn't a threat to anybody. It was actually kind of funny. But anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you this time. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.